Hello, welcome everybody. Welcome, come in and find a seat. Let's begin, as always, by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the lands on which we meet today. Our Meaningful Aging Australia team live and work on Wurundjeri land of the Kulin Nation, and we pay our respects to elders past and present and acknowledge the spiritual strength and resilience of Australia's First Peoples and their deep and enduring connection to country, the land, the sky, and the water, and the animals who live there. Welcome. I'm Jacquie Malloy, and welcome to Book Club, final book club of the day. Hello, everyone. I'm back. I missed you all last month. I was away. I was in the Northern Territory, roaming around as you do. So I was having my own adventures of awe and wonder. So the last section of this book, our bright shining book, has some cracking stories, in such emotional and powerful stories. It's really hard to know where to start. But I think one of the places that I might start is in just saying my own thoughts, which align very much with the restorative justice chapter, which I found to be absolutely stunning. And Julia cites Jane Bolitho, who says, at the core of it, it is the creation of a space that opens up possibility and therefore hope. And there's something about that, the opening up of possibility, that I feel aligns with what we've been talking about as grace. That grace, if nothing else, offers the opportunity to reframe, refeel, reevaluate a situation, a relationship, and where there's possibility, there's hope. And I feel like these are all quite intertwined. I just got goosebumps then. I feel like these are all kind of intertwined. But this restorative justice, I don't know how you feel. Please chime in as you go. Let's make this one as chatty as you want in the chat or live in person. The restorative justice, I just found it, on the one hand, kind of unbelievable that people can do this, and on the other hand, thinking it's entirely normal and natural and organic. It's really, yeah, it was really something. The particular story, now I'm just going to find it.
While you find it, Jacquie, I found in this restorative justice chapter, it was really good to read the reasons for it. And one thing I've been thinking of is, even though it said the jury's out on effectiveness of it, I really liked that she said it gives victims and perpetrators a chance to share, but also victims a voice. And I think that can be really important in a way that they can't during a court process.
Yeah.
And it's sometimes the victims might not be just the mother or the daughter or the sister. It could be far-reaching. So the story she was telling about my brother was killed and I can't love my son. So it affected the son as well, and it affected her marriage, I'm sure. And it just ripples out. And I think that do we need to have research evidence for something to still be good and worthwhile?
Yeah.
Putting it out there.
There's something so human about it, isn't it? Yeah.
Cool. Did you find your bit?
I did. It's actually in the next chapter, which sort of follows on, I feel, which is people who have forgiven, because it's all under that all under that wonderful exploration of forgiveness and what it means to forgive and how to forgive, and how it can be the giving up of something, giving up the burden. Again, where there's an opportunity for possibility. Is it possible to give this up? And it's the story about Carrier, who was, when he was the little boy, taken and stabbed and then shot in the back of the head, and somehow survived this and grew up to be a man so capable of forgiveness that he befriended his attacker. It made me cry at the end. This last paragraph: over the next 3 weeks, Carrier went to visit McAllister every other day, taking him his favourite treats of smoked amberjack, reading to him, praying with him, caring for him. In the 3rd week, McAllister passed away. Carrier was his only friend. How do you do that? That's we're talking about grace, and grace must be present in that.
Yes.
It must be present in that. It's impossible to imagine how it happens otherwise.
I think that what struck me reading, I mean, that forgiveness chapter was the hardest thing to read in some ways.
Yeah.
And you think, well, how do we teach? Because forgiveness is such a loaded word, I feel. But it's like, it doesn't mean that what they did was right, but it means that you can let go.
Mm.
But trying to think, well, what do I teach my kids about this? And there's that thing of, well, rise above. When someone does something, rise above, don't stoop down to their level. That takes grace too. That takes grace of, not, especially when someone's attacked your integrity. It's like, well, rise above, don't be like them, I suppose. But I know I'm talking a lot, but the thing that I've actually, I mean, my notes were in that forgiveness about forgiving the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
And the person, Eva Kaur, she was one of the twins that Mengele had experimented on. And she was saying it's an act of forgiveness is an act of self-healing, self-liberation, self-empowerment. I don't need anybody's approval or acceptance. Reconciliation takes 2 people, which is why it's so difficult. I also call forgiveness the best revenge against the perpetrator. Some Holocaust survivors don't like this and call me a traitor. I've been told that in the Jewish tradition, the perpetrator must repent and ask for forgiveness. My thing is, but what if they've died, or they don't even think that what they did was wrong, or they don't know how it's been wronged? And then she goes on, I forgave the Nazis not because they deserve it, but because I deserve it. And that was really nice for me. It flipped it round for me.
Yeah.
So in our work with older people, does this mean that spiritual care is giving them an opportunity to reflect on their past and maybe speak for them to say sorry in some way to themselves or to others?
Giving them space. Because while it's something that you might do, you might forgive without needing the other person to be part of that process. It's also incredibly powerful if someone can hear you, if you can voice that. And I feel that that's where the spiritual care comes in, is giving people space and time and presence, the courtesy and the gift of presence for them to reveal themselves, for them to de-burden themselves. I think that's one of the ways that restorative justice was talked about, the de-burdening of someone. That's a great point, Sal. I think that's exactly right.
Am I on here? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you, Suzanne.
Sorry, I was late. My computer didn't work. And I think that's one of the real skills of spiritual care. Just about the Nazis, I don't know if I've said this before, but I think C.S. Lewis makes a very good point that, you know, when we think about forgiveness, probably we shouldn't start with the Nazis. We should start with those people closer to home. And I think that's a really good thing because, you know, when we do in the CPE I teach with aged care, one of the things we talk about are the myths of dying. And the myths of dying, of course, is that everything will be forgiven when you die, that you'll be surrounded with your loved ones and all those old, all those old family tensions will be resolved and everyone will be forgiven. And I love that sense that, you know, one of the things we can teach about ritual in dying is that maybe the person you forgive is yourself. And that's the skill that many spiritual carers have, is that whatever needs to be forgiven, the other person might not be there because of whatever the family tensions are. That might not be possible. The person may have died. Maybe that the person that needs to be forgiven is actually the person who's dying because they're the perpetrator. So the forgiveness ritual actually might need to be enacted with the dying person in themselves. And so often we need to work with those myths around it's not going to be the whole family around there. So we have to sometimes help educate other people to go, because sometimes we're our own worst enemies because we tell stories of, oh, we brought everyone together around the bed and everything was wonderful. And we have those stories that are perpetuated around the work, when in actual fact, it's lovely when they happen, but it's not necessarily the only work. And if it can be done, great, we can be part of that. But that's not sometimes the kind of stereotypical work. There is the other work, and it's working with the person in front of you.
And creating that safe, non-judgmental space.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's great.
One of the things that I loved the line when, sorry, I jumped a bit late. I hope this hasn't already been said, but when she's talking about the fact that history is complicated, that the big passage she read about, you know, that the trouble they got into about the telecast of the funeral, and you know, one small line in the context of a whole thing, and I was reflecting in my own life on a situation around that. If any of you are Catholic in the call, you might be familiar with the music of David Haas, who's written some couple of songs that Catholics really love. And we can't use his music in any integrity anymore because he's currently got 21 women who've made quite serious sexual allegations against him because he's used his music to groom women. And the Catholic Church has been using his music for a long time. He has some really iconic songs within the Catholic Church. And it's kind of, you know, memos have gone out to lots of parishes, please don't use his music, because, of course, every time we use his music, he gets paid a royalty. And, you know, at the moment, it's 21 women. There's no doubt about it. And, you know, I used his music in my mum's funeral. My funeral playlist is on my Spotify phone. I have a large playlist on my phone, and it's kind of like, I really like this music, but if I listen to it, am I perpetuating this sense? So it's kind of like, you know, it's like Rolf Harris, you know, do we listen to his Christmas songs that we have? But then we look back at some of our painters. We know some of the stories of Gauguin and some of these painters. Can we? It's that sense of, it's complicated. It's very complicated. So I thought,
Complicated.
You know, this stuff is complicated. It's difficult, isn't it? So we listen to this sense of, yeah, it's complicated.
Very complicated.
Yeah. I know Rach isn't here at the moment. She may end up joining us from the road, but I know that she had a couple of favorite passages that really stood out to her And so I'll share those with you. One is from Auntie Lorraine from that first chapter in this last section that we're reading. We will wear you down with our love.
Yeah.
And she said we were encouraged to think about the difference between mental illness and spiritual illness.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's such an interesting thing, because when you read that, you sort of think, of course, because they're two separate things. Except when you really think about it and you try and parse it, it's pretty hard, actually.
Yes, exactly. They are intertwined because we are human beings. We are.
Yeah. So
and our bodies and everything. It's
that's really deep reflection, isn't it? To go to be able to think about that in that way is, yeah. It's such a simple line too, just a simple line. The other thing that I know, as we probably all did, was Stan Grant's speech. It's just, you can never read it too many times. That is grace right there. That is grace right there. An amazing capacity of our First Nations people to be willing to continue to walk alongside us.
One of the things that jumped out at me this time was when he said, "You set out to hurt me and you have hurt me." And it's like, not often we do say, "You've hurt me and I'm going to move on from it." Like, I don't say people hurt me because I don't want them to feel bad.
Yeah.
Jackie, can I go back to when you said about the loving them? What was the name of the chapter?
We will wear you down with our love.
Wear you down with our love. Earlier in the book, Julia had talked about when she whinged about work colleagues or something that she didn't like, her mum would always say, "Well, love them more," which sounds counter, and that's been really challenging. So when someone is mean to you, love them more. And so I sat there thinking, well, what does that actually look like? What does it look like to love someone more? Putting it out there. Anyone got the answer to that one?
That's in the same camp as Rise Above It. I mean, it's
and
like,
wear you down
how
with
do
our
you
love.
do these things? How do you do them? What do they look like? And how do you do it while staying whole yourself and having your own boundaries and your own sense
just
of
on that
self-respect?
point, hi, I'm Makula. Just on that point is, one needs to build, as spiritual care workers, chaplains, pastoral care workers, strength within ourselves. And so that's what we can do, is build that strength within ourselves. So when these times come about, which they will and they do, they land within us and we have that support already. And how you do that is such an individual thing, but perhaps it's one thing we can do, given that we're talking about a book on grace, is that we invite grace into our lives every moment of every day. I'm a Buddhist, and and the term grace is a bit well, it's interesting. However, it can be, it turns up in Buddhism. I'm sure it does. It's got another name, but I still every day wake, and then that's one of the first things that comes to mind is, oh, here we are again, and please, grace, enter my life. In the things that are happening to me, the conversations, so that I may respond from a place of strength, from a place of, what's the word? Place of
integrity, place of
thank you, an integrity, yeah, a
love.
place of integrity, but also that that sense of I'm not being wronged here. I
Yeah.
can, I can hold this in grace.
And I think one of the things we watch too is boundaries. Like, we kind of know at what point it's right. One of the stories I use in my pastoral care training is of a woman in Canberra called Clea Rose about 15 years ago. And she was out on a night out with friends in Civic in the centre of town. And she was hit by a 14-year-old driving a stolen car. And her parents did the restorative justice thing with the young man. And, he came out of jail. And they met with him several times, and he offended again, and they met with him again, not against them, and then in the end he's continued to offend, and they said, we have now pulled back from that situation. They said, we have done what we can, we wish him the best, but we are unable to continue engage anymore for our own personal well-being, and we now have to leave it to other people to work with him, because we now need to go on and live our life to mourn our daughter. It's 20 years down the track now. However, this is now our boundary. We have placed our boundary. We wish him the best, and we will no longer engage in this system, because we have to live our lives. And they knew that. They did it very publicly, and they weren't carrying resentment to him, because they have left him now. They have left him and they parked him, and they have done the best. However, he is unable to have any more part in their lives, because it will hurt them. So this is a boundary they have placed. And I think for all of us who work in fields like this too, we do a lot of work in training around boundaries. Where are our boundaries? And I think
boundaries are what keep us safe. I think, when you were saying that you come, Makula, from a place of integrity, is that also maybe from a place of safety? I think if you know that you're safe,
yes,
then, which is also what boundaries do for us, Suzanne. I really resonate with what you're saying. I think about Jesus saying, love your enemies and pray for those who despitefully use you, in the old language. And I think you can only do that from a place of knowing you're safe from them. I can remember listening to a person saying, trying to unpack that. It's one thing to love God, it's another to love your neighbor, but what about to actually love your enemy? And if you know you have an enemy in the room with you, you will put yourself in a safe place, and you will put you will be vigilant. You might be armed, ready to defend yourself. Using that metaphor, so you can. So in that sense, what you give is it's still a posture of grace, in that you can try to understand. Like at the very last part of We Will Wear You Down with the very last part of the chapter, A Broken Place, people who have forgiven. Julia refers to Marilyn Robinson, one of my favorite authors, and says, forgiveness, if you forgive, you may indeed still not understand, but you will be ready to understand, and that is the posture of grace. So trying to understand the wholeness of a situation as well. I'm probably saying too much. I'm just packing it all into my little bit. But
it's also good, isn't it?
That we can be with enemies from a place of safety, and that we can attempt to have that posture of grace.
So we do still have that choicing of how much or whether we engage.
Well, for me as a Christian, I could not feel safe unless I was feeling very connected to God. And, all the psalmists constantly sing songs of God is my refuge. God is my strength. I hide myself in God. And so for me, that's different to trying to find the strength in myself to forgive, or the strength to be kind to an enemy. But it's only about being as much connected to God as I possibly can. So calling on God's Holy Spirit to fill me and help me. And that might be only as much as to be able to pray for that person at a distance where I feel safe. Because it's interesting that Jesus said, pray for them. Maybe that's all I could do.
It's aligned with that. I just want to go back to something that Michaela, that you said, that you ask for grace in every moment of every day. And I wonder if in the asking for grace is where the opportunity for possibility lives, and that becomes almost a self-fulfilling destiny, that by asking for grace you receive grace.
Yes, I think so, because it opens the door, or opens the window into our existence, into each of our existence, where possibly the door has been closed or the windows have been closed. We have to be. In my experience, I have to be willing to be open, willing to open. Not to be opened, but to open to, the possibility of it sitting within my life on a regular basis, because we can get so busy and we run around, especially when I'm in a car and I do hundreds of kilometers a week, visiting clients, and it's again, I arrive at somebody's door, and one of the things that I say to myself, within my mind is, grace is here. Grace is
It's like
here.
the ultimate reset, isn't it? And in readiness.
Yeah. And also, I've also followed the 3 basic tenets of sort of, I can't remember the Bernie Glassman. He was a wonderful Buddhist fellow, and he's now died, but it's like, we arrive at the door not knowing. We arrive at the door listening. We arrive at the door bringing action, appropriate action. And then I tack on the end and I arrive at the door with grace.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It's beautiful. So I suppose the answer to the question, how do we love more? How do we wear them down with our life, is the kindness. Having that grace. And she finishes the last chapter with, even small act of kindness can make big impressions on people.
Yeah.
I do like that word, being kind. It's one of my motto, be kind.
It's
and be
simple
kind
but
to ourselves.
profound, isn't it? Sorry, Michaela, were you saying something?
I just said, and be kind to ourselves.
To ourselves, exactly.
In our kindness with each other. Another.
It almost feels there's so much to say in here. There's so much to think about. Boy, I love that Marilyn Robinson quote about the posture of grace. I really love that. It's 1:31, everyone. It's we're kind of at the end, but I don't really want it to end. It's been
I have
such
to go
a
to
joy
another
to
meeting.
read this.
So
Sorry?
I have to go to another meeting.
I have to go as well.
Please go if you need to go. I did want
Thank
to
you.
ask, before we wrap up, how we feel about continuing with the book club. a little
it's
bit
a great,
later in the year.
it's a great idea. Lovely.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
That sounds good. That's all the go ahead we need because we're fairly predisposed to it over this side. So yeah.
Mm,
Lovely and life-giving to us.
yes.
Yeah.
It's been fabulous. You know,
Yeah.
I as you know, I'm in my car and I'm beside a park, and you know, it's a must for me in a month is to tune in and just listen to the grace of people's words. It's divine. Yeah,
Oh, that's fantastic, Nicola. Thank you.
yeah.
Oh, well, everyone, that was just so terrific. Thank you so much for being here. Thanks for being part of this. Thanks for reading along. It's been, yeah, it's been a really great pleasure to dive into some of these stories and ruminate on them and imagine what it might be like to be in the shoes of some of those people and what it would take for us to follow their path. So with that said, stay tuned. We'll probably look at something around an August, September, October run for the next club. Yeah.
Okay.
Lovely.
See ya.
Stay tuned.
Thank
Bye,
you so
everybody.
much.
Bye bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.